Now available in paperback and coming to Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, Dark Succubus. The man who rules the world is tempted by a sultry succubus in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Dark Succubus in paperback or pre-order on Kindle Unlimited today. A couple of weeks ago, I put in a pledge for Raymond Leonard's Agent Solo comic book. And this one caught my eye because it featured a positive image of a black superhero and a strong positive image of a masculine black man. And I recently got a copy of Raymond Leonard's Agent Solo, the digital version, on Wednesday, and after reading it, I can say that this is a great comic and one I highly recommend everybody go out and pick up. Raymond Leonard's Agent Solo does a great job of capturing the heart and the spirit of 1990s comics, like those produced by Image Comics and many of the early 90s Marvel comics done by guys like Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, and Wallace Patricio, and the art really captures that essence of 1990s visual style and 1990s costume design, with everything from the armor to the leg belts to all of those cool things like that everybody knows from 1990s costume design. Because when I opened this comic book up, it literally was like taking a trip back to the grocery store when I would go out and buy books like those in Jim Lee's X-Men run, or Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man run, or Rob Liefeld's X-Force run. It really reminded me of all of those great books, and it really reminded me of the fun stories that I used to go out and buy at the comic shop back in the days, and the grocery store back in the days. And that was really the fun part of this comic. Was it was literally like going back to the good old days of the 90s, and it captures all of the fun parts that were really fun of those early 90s comics. And the Agent Solo first issue does a great job of introducing the Agent Solo character, a black bionic super agent who goes out on missions to save and defend the world, and sets up several subplots that our Agent Solo are going to have to deal with. One that has to do with international intrigue as related to the MetTech technology that powers Agent Solo, and a second story arc which has to deal with several criminals who have broken out of prison and are getting ready to wreak havoc in Chicago. And both of these stories set up very nicely, and they are very fast-paced. I mean, after reading this comic, I was really eager for more, and I am definitely gonna put in a pledge for that second issue, because I want to find out what happens with the story in Agent Solo, because Raymond Leonard and his team do a great job of setting up things in the first issue, introducing us to the main character, the conflicts and obstacles he has to deal with, and really giving us a reason to care about what goes on with Agent Solo and the missions he goes on. So Raymond Leonard and his team, they have done an amazing job really setting up this comic, really setting up the pacing, really setting up the action. And that was something that I was really impressed by with this comic, is you get a lot of action in this comic. I mean, this is like a big budget action movie on a page. Every page has that big action. That's something I've talked about as related to what we need to see in comics. It's big, bold, and dynamic. We have characters that are brightly colored, and everything just really pops here. And this is what comics should be. I mean, if this was on a comic rack in a grocery store or a comic shop, I definitely would have picked this one up. And that's why I want to recommend everybody go get this Agent Solo first issue, because this is a really rock solid first issue. Really solid writing, really solid art, and really solid character development. And I love the homages to old school 1990s with things like these names, because the names of many of these characters really take me back to the 90s. Names like of some of the villains, like this Shark Bull, or this guy who reminds me of Deadpool, who comes in on the first page, Strikeout. They really remind me of those 90s characters and many of those crazy 90s names. And Agent Solo, the ninja that's with Agent Solo, she has a name that reminds me of the 90s with the Swift Blade. All these names remind me a lot of those characters that we used to see in Image Comics, like Zealot, who was on Wildcats, and characters like Pike, who was in Wildcats, and many of these other characters like Strife and Zero and Forearm that were on X-Force. It really takes you back to that period of the 90s. Now, I know a lot of people have issues with stuff as related to the 90s, but I always thought that 1990 to about 1994, there were some really great comics coming out of all of these companies, Marvel, DC, and Image. And it wasn't until really about 95 with the whole Teen Tony thing that we really started to see a real serious decline in quality. But the early 90s, that was a really fun period of really fun action and adventure. And there were some really good stories that came out of there. And Raymond, Leonard, and his team, they do a great job of taking us back to that early 90s period with Agent Solo and the first issue. And this first issue, it's so much fun that it makes you think about those old days when you would go to the comic shop and you would pick up an issue, and like I would do, I would just read it on the bus, and you would want to get more. And I really want to see more Agent Solo, and if Raymond comes out with a second issue, I'm definitely putting in a pledge to pick up that second issue, and I recommend you put in a pledge to get the second issue, and you head over to his Indiegogo store to go pick up the first issue of Agent Solo, because you are going to be in for a treat. You're going to be in for a real fun comic. And this is one ride you want to get on at the start, because this is a comic, after you read the first issue, you're going to be hungry for more with the next issue. I'm raising funds to put together my first ISIS graphic novel, and if you could donate $1 or more to the Patreon, it would help me a long way towards getting that project off the ground and getting funded. And I'm releasing John Haynes' Dark Succubus this week in paperback. And if you want to try that book, you can go to Amazon.com by clicking the link in the description box and pick up the second book in the John Haynes series. And in this action-packed adventure, the man who rules the world is tempted by a sultry succubus. And I think you'll enjoy that book, and I think you'll enjoy Agent Solo. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.